got a really good show.
You see, we have some Michigan Polish pronunciations. We had the Jahoski last year, which is Jahoski.
All the Polish people in the room, can you raise your hands? Okay, so don't boo and hiss. Don't boo and hiss if it goes badly. And when I pronounce it, it
It'll
goes.
go fine if I do it.
Yes. Take it away.
Just don't let him pronounce his own name. He's from Michigan. Jahoski. What are we doing?
Did you hear the joke about the writer? Oh, I know, I gotta do it. Did you hear the one about the screenwriter who comes home and finds out that everything, including the dog, has gone up in flames?
No, I haven't heard that one, Leanne.
So his wife is weeping and carrying on and wringing her hands because she said, oh, Fluffy is dead too. But your agent called.
And then what happened, Leanne?
He says, wait, back up. What did the agent have to say about my book? This is a tough room.
We just started drinking.
Start drinking more, it'll get funnier. Okay.
What are we doing?
We are going to
alphabetical. No, we're not going in alphabetical. Well, we're going alphabetical. How did this come up?
I don't know.
All right. Aviva's first, Nathan's second, Mike's third, Genevieve's fourth, and Emma Catherine's fifth. Just so you know, I don't know why I got them in this order. Yeah. The last three went in alphabetical order.
Wait a
It's the
minute.
order they sent it to me.
Who?
It's the order I received them.
But,
From the writers.
I want to know who's blank. Who sent it to you?
The writers. Always.
I do have an announcement to make. Genevieve, are you in the room?
Yes.
Genevieve Arley?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got an announcement. I'm working on it. I've got an announcement. I received a check from you for $10 million for Publishers Weekly. It looks like you've been playing the odds and have won. See me after the reading. I brought it this evening. And the rest of us want loans. So,
I bet you do.
Anyhow, what often happens in our program is we forget to say why we're actually here. And tonight we're welcoming a new class. So, into our PhD program, our creative writing with a creative writing dissertation. And so tonight they will be reading, I think for 5 hours each. It'll be great. And should we start?
we should start.
All right. Okay. I'm going to take the first one. Something happened over the summer. I went blind. I am grayer. That happened last semester. But the blindness happened. Yes. Okay. Aviva Kozowski. You're happy with that? You're not from Michigan. Thank God. If she was from Michigan, there'd be some guy. Kozowski. She's Kozowski. So Aviva Kozowski's poems have appeared in Ninth Letter, Spillway Magazine, Cancer Poetry Project Anthology, and other publications. She received her MFA from the University of California, Riverside, where she was awarded a Chancellor's Fellowship of Distinction. She's a former Breadloaf Work Study Scholar and was a poetry resident at Art Farm, Nebraska. When I read this, I thought Ant Farm. I was like, whoa, that's cool. But it was just an art farm. In her previous life, she was a learning specialist at a school on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. She's now pursuing her PhD in English and creative writing at the University of Georgia in Athens, where she's also part of CORE, the UAGA aerial dance. Are you like a trapeze artist? Are you going to do some of that tonight?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So Aviva, everyone.
The
first poem is called Kalpa, a word like a handful. Did you know we lived through one infinity? Those 3 seasons were only an inch. I used to think my life was a tiny dot, a pile of flotsam off the coast of the mainland, where a soul could rest for the length of a sigh. But another universe was born beneath this one, without so much as a spark. There were no triangulated stars, no swallowed atoms, no concealed black orbs that could only claim existence by the way they carried emptiness as if it had a mass. It was just a long winter and a spring that crept in on the weightless heels of sunlight. The memory of how you stood out of that darkness and pulled me in, as if there were a combustion between us, a tiny universe, so light that if I tossed it across the surface of that frozen lake, it would skid clean into the dew of the other side. And Kalpa, as defined in my poem, one full cycle of the universe from creation to long night, darkness, the lack of any actual cycle, a very, very long time. The next poem is on the night of the Orlando shootings. Perhaps she texted at the end of her shift and the other had been waiting for the ping. As they greeted one another in the street, the air was a thick grade of something humid, watery, ancient. And they were shy, because a lot can happen in 3 days. One dressed up and one dressed down. So as they walked side by side, not quite holding hands, they were uneven, like 2 candles illuminated deep. As they rode the bus, one told a story of her childhood, how she'd written "I love you" to her friend and learned it wasn't okay to speak from the heart. Perhaps in the club it was hard to dance. They hadn't used their bodies in this way. It was hard to hear the music. But eventually they heard it, like a train approaching from far away. It was coming, but it was also going. It connected them at the middle of their lives. Perhaps before they touched, one left to buy her another drink and returned, the vodka and juice spilling on her hands. They passed it back and forth, taking small sips, and moved, every few minutes striking a formation that felt real. An arm over the head, a bend of the knees, exploring the latitudes of night and the club and the unknown bodies surrounding them like a forest of trees. So when she finally pulled her close, she was unsure if it was the perfume or the smell of her neck that made her close her eyes and lean in as if she were sinking into the earth after a rain. The next poem is called In the Short Term. I have 2 older sisters, so I'm never at a loss for advice. And one of them, her constant criticism of me is that I think too much in the short term and I never have a long-term plan. So this is kind of like a meditation on the short term, and I thought it's relevant too because it's about how things don't really change, but here I am living in Athens, Georgia, and it's completely different than my life a month ago. So in the short term. The morning sky won't change much. The bum without even a cup to rattle will stand outside of Dunkin' Donuts, and no one will look in his eyes as they shake their heads. But the sky will have the same hue, blue aurora borealis seam of daylight, my yoga instructor says, something hidden in the brain, the 7th chakra. They'll still be doing work downstairs. The plaster smell will waft upwards as the windows remain ajar. The pigeons, unseen on fire escapes while residents are at work, will coo and roost as the cat stalks behind the glass. I won't make any huge life changes. When the short becomes long, there will be a slight hardening of the heart to one who once mattered. It won't be felt as a death, but a slow fading away. The way fall shadows decrease by inches and no longer touch a portion of the street, or how a stray cat seen from the office disappears as she traces light to garbage unseen. The sky will change, but that is a shifting aurora. In a year, it will be as though no time has passed. The Dunkin' Donuts has moved next door, and I no longer work in the building with the blue doors, sky-domed courtyard. The homeless have disappeared, charcoal imprints against the bleak walls of their former presences. The TV screens boast hot breakfast sandwiches and coffee blacker than the sky before dawn. This one's called Barcelona. I see her at Urban Outfitters, that girl I went to Spain with the summer we were 16. She was a girl of the Upper East Side who could talk so hard about bars, famous people she met in the dim, conspiring light. She carried around a photo of herself and Sean Penn to go with the story. How she met him one night on a closed-down set and leaned into his lap as he whispered, "You make me so excited." These were the kinds of things we concerned ourselves with. Though I was writing a novel, in love with my English teacher who gave me the same eyes as Sean Penn in the photo. I was an innocent girl who ordered sex on the beach. I started small fires with my American dancing. But what I coveted were the quiet moments, how the shops closed for siesta and sometimes never reopened, or how I'd catch a smell from a window over an alley like bread or something European, recalling my childhood. "Yes, I remember you," she says, by the mirrors in the changing room underground, and she takes out a memory, dangling it in the white space between us as if it were a photograph. It's me in front of the dim mirror in our hostel bathroom, putting on mascara. "I don't know how I remember that," she says, "but why do we remember anything?" Later, I'll read her story, like page 6, but not even, how she sued her roommate for murdering her cat and asked her 9th grade students to write suicide notes. I also succumbed to a 5th floor walk-up with a view of a single tree bearing plastic shrapnel battered through seasons. So I walk up to street level where dusk shelters a now quaint Upper East Side, past teens who keep getting taller and pale like ghost trees, their lives already behind them. Okay, second to last one. This is called Jerusalem, 1991. There's no record of the figs, familiar in their plum-like, seedy luster. I thought if I found the right one, I could heal my cousin's sty. Just a hotel lobby blasting Phantom of the Opera as I climbed over laps like they were logs, trying to reach my mother. I never considered myself a needy child. Later, we're walking down the street during a carnival. I grasp my mom's hand, but it leaves. I grab it again, and it goes. The sun is going down, the twilight full of students waving streamers, pigeons rise into static as the tape cuts out. My last poem is a work in progress. It'll probably appear in workshop very soon. It's called Memorial Day Weekend, Union Square, New York City. Riding the elevator up to the Kundalini studio, a discussion breaks around a crack in the glass. Must be the weight of bodies, people leaning against the handicapped bar, which must be a certain height according to city code. This glass was just installed last week, says a resident. Its aqua sheen reflects all 8 of us. He leaves. He thinks it's the bar, but it isn't, says a woman dressed in white for the class we're about to take, a color through which energy travels freely. In the studio, the smell of their distinctive chai tea, the chlorine of carpet fabric softeners. My amygdala pulses with last summer's sorrow, how you knew to hurt me, more intimate than sex. I remember it all in an ash of tea leaves, warm milk, star of anise. A year ago today, I woke early to chop baby tomatoes, mozzarella. I tucked them in a container to keep our lunch cool. When I go to sign in, the woman from the elevator updates the teacher on the argument. She leaves out the rush of our movement through time and space, the seconds that ticked by, the evacuated city bodied by tourists and light. A year ago today, tea leaves, star of anise, warm milk, chopped tomatoes, and mozzarella. We climbed up to a high rock. You changed your shirt, satin department store bra, and asked if you made me nervous. It's dangerous for a writer, my sister once told me, to leave in the middle of a sentence. There in body, but not in breath, how the wind whispered. He thinks it's the bar, she tells the woman in the tall white stacked turban, as if these were holy words. Sometimes there is just nothing left to say. But people will lean. They will lean, the teacher says. Honing in on this small truth, we sign our names. But it's interesting. It is interesting, she says. Thank you.
I just want to say, as an older sibling, if my younger brother got into a PhD program, got into his car and got there, I would think he finally had a long-term plan. Just saying. What's happening? Do you have a joke?
Did you hear the one about the two riders that went to hell?
No. Are we there yet?
It wasn't good. It really wasn't.
Okay, these jokes. She got them off the internet. She's like, Maggie, I got these writer jokes off the internet. All right, cool. Are you doing good?
I'm doing the
All right,
next one.
I'll just stand.
Dun, 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 dun. Hey, Nathan Dixon is a first-year PhD student at UGA. His work has appeared in Tin House, the North Carolina Literary Review, Nailed, and the Erotic Review. After serving a couple of years as assistant editor of the Renaissance Papers, he has a critical article coming out in an academic journal this year. He comes
The
to
academic journal, meaning that one.
that one.
Right. The definite article is really good.
He comes to Athens from Durham, North Carolina, where he earned a master's degree while, what the hell, tending bar
It's called Make a Dream.
and climbing rocks.
That's when they do this now. They go like,
This while they're, okay.
yeah, they.
Nathan.
All right. This is a work in progress. It's some creative nonfiction, and it's called The Grandeur. Above the green hills rolling north toward Virginia, the sky hangs heavy yellow, same color as the water-stained ceiling at my grandfather's house. We come heaving up Dabney Drive to Roanoke Avenue, the truck sagging with the load, right on South Beckford, left on 39, into the sweating country summer, and past the landfill, where I thought we were headed with the trailer full of microwaves and the old console TV that had broken with a hiss when we wedged it through the back door. Off to the landfill with the black trash bags full of mildewed shirts and baseball caps and the piles of cracked plastic medical equipment. Although we didn't say it, we carried guilt in our bellies for letting them live like this, among the worm-burrowed stacks of Reader's Digest abridgments and the smoke-caked yellow walls. My mother wouldn't bring Rocky the Rat Terrier for fear of him swallowing one of innumerable pills littering the carpet beneath the hydraulic lazy boy, where Pop spent the last years of his life, become a part of the chair, the Fox News commentators shouting at him from the TV 24/7. Now, at the gravel pull-off past the landfill, where two big rig tires bake in the sun, my dad comes around the side of the truck, unbuttoning his Hawaiian shirt with one hand while holding aloft in the other, as if some sad set of miniature trophies, two Winston Reds that he swiped from the carton on Pop's kitchen counter as we left. "I don't want your mother smelling the smoke on me," he says, hanging his shirt on the side view mirror of the truck. "You can keep her secret, can't you?" His khaki cargo shorts are hiked up above his belly button, and his tube socks droop down over his brown New Balance tennis shoes, and I worried about him as he groaned beneath the weight of the console TV. But boy, does he smoke a cigarette like he knows what he's doing. If there's anything in the house that you want," he says, "you know you can have it." I nod, staring at the trailer full of microwaves as we light up and play the part of good old boys. Out here in the cut, halfway to Car Lake, where Ford trucks roar down the blacktop on bald wheels, and shirtless black boys walk on the low shoulder with fishing poles fitted to their arms like muskets. What secrets did the old man harbor as he rasped in and out of consciousness in the bright Maria Parham hospital room? We Dixon boys have a penchant for addiction, and although I am too young to know the man my grandfather was before he became caretaker to his wife and his crippled other son, my dad's been opening up on drunken holiday evenings. He's told me about riding out to the lake as a teenager, where his father pointed out what he called the sugar shack in the pine woods and bragged to his son with a wink about fucking strange women inside. Told me how Pop, after he'd had a few drinks, would call him Fatty Arbuckle and encourage him and his brother Wayne to fist fight in front of him. Although Wayne was younger, I've gathered from descriptions that he was a mean son of a bitch and always won. My dad's told me about how he was accepted to a liberal arts boarding school in Winston-Salem after excelling in junior high, and Pop refusing to let him stay when his roommate arrived on move-in day, a black boy. They repacked the cardboard boxes and rode back to Henderson in silence. My grandfather was never a great talker unless he was full of ancient age, and my dad didn't need to hear him spit the word nigger to know why they left. And for all this nature is never spent, there lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and though the last lights off the black west went, morning on the brown brink, eastward springs. A broken toy revolver rides in my pocket as we smoke our cigarettes. Pop had pulled it from the crease of his chair during one of those last visits and asked if I remembered finding it in the sand by the elementary school off Yowland Road. I tried to take it away from you, he said, and tried to explain how it was just a piece of trash, but you wouldn't listen. You went running off into the field beside the playground, pinching that sticky trigger at bad guys in the grass. Today at the house, I found curled in the barrel a brittle piece of paper that recounted this story in Pop's shaky, childlike scrawl. Ever since the stroke, he'd been forced to write with his left hand, which means he didn't write at all if he could help it. At the bottom, he'd scribbled, "You'll never know how much I love you. You're my buddy." And though it looks rushed, I know it must have taken him a long time, and he probably cussed or cried or both while he was writing it. On his regimen of pain pills, the old insomniac spent many days and nights gape-mouthed in his lazy boy, reeling back over the run-together years. My 5-year-old self was just as real to him as my 25-year-old self, and I don't know if he ever believed either one of them when he heard the words, "I love you." I'm told we didn't visit often after Mama died because Pop drank a fifth of whiskey a day for 10 years straight. He sold the family home on Yowland Drive after Wayne passed and bought a houseboat with the money. When Dad would go up to check on him, he'd find him slumped in a lawn chair on deck with ash sprinkled down the neck of his shirt and potholes in the polyester where the burning cigarette had dropped from the old man's mouth and tumbled down his paunch. He was old even then, but seemed immortal, at least to me. I've heard him describe himself during those years as almost an alcoholic. My dad liked to raise his eyebrows afterward and repeat the word, almost. Why is it even now that the thought of a 10-year bender inspires some starry-eyed, flag-waving impulse in me? He was a pitiful old drunk, shuffling around a boat in gout-swollen loafers, everyone he'd ever known and loved but his one son's family dead and gone away for good. He didn't think he was long for this world then, but boy was he mistaken. When I was 15 and had a driver's permit, I was allowed to spend a weekend on the boat with him. He decided on Saturday, after drinking all morning, that we should go and see his brother Doug an hour north on the Virginia side of Lake Gaston. He sagaciously determined that I should do the driving since he'd had one or two too many. The only cars I'd ever driven were the driver's ed compact and my dad's Suzuki Sidekick. Toys compared to the 8-cylinder Cadillac DeVille that took off like water from a funnel and swayed boat-like over the narrow country road snaking through the deciduous shadows. Once we got going, he dozed off, and every time I thought to look down at the speedometer, the tilt of the little orange needle astonished me. A purr of silver speed as I meditated on how sleeping old folks look like children. When his mouth drooped open, I couldn't help but recollect the story he told me the night before about he and another boy named Shorty Pigram tossing jelly beans into a mule's ears outside of a candy store. As I slid from side to side over the warped asphalt, I heard him whisper my grandmother's name and chuckle in his sleep, his loose dentures clacking like castanets in his mouth, adding a muted rhythm to the electric cicadas. I'm gonna miss him, my dad tells me now, blowing smoke from his nose. Me too, I answer, shaking my head at the microwaves. I've not practiced mourning and feel awkward in the pregnant silences, knowing I'm required to conjure living images of a man who'd wanted nothing more than to die during the last decade of his life or more. But this is what we do. Avoid the holiday drunk talk about a poor angry white man and talk instead about rough edges and the wrung washcloth of a heart and the thin chest of a poker player called Lucky Ray. I was too young to know him before Shirley got sick. She was in a wheelchair by the time I was born and dead soon after my brother came along. Then Wayne was Pop's responsibility and Pop's alone. He bought his disabled son a Nintendo and filled his plastic pill container every Sunday evening until the cigarette smoking caught up to the grown boy and he too died, 20-something years after the speeding automobile careened into the pylon that killed 5 of the 6 Marines inside. Pop and my father often agreed that if not for the accident, Wayne would have wound up in prison. As it was, he played Super Mario and Duck Hunt in the back bedroom with my brother and I when we visited at Thanksgiving and Christmas. Pop finally sold the houseboat in a desperate bid to save his own childhood home after his sister Lassie was fleeced by a snake oil insurance salesman who ran away with every dime of her retirement. But these sad stories invariably give way to the rollicking, absurd ones that Pop himself would have wanted told. A story of a stovetop still ready to combust while Shirley and the boys were away at church. A metal cylinder pilfered from the Coca-Cola factory, shaking angrily in the kitchen until Pop chopped the copper tubing running from the top and sprayed the house with machine gun bullets made of raisins. A story of Pop waking drunk in his lazy boy, sighting a single 2x4 standing upright down the hallway on the poker table and pulling his .22 pistol from his pocket just to see if he could hit it. He got it all right, but had of course forgotten that his fat cousin Zelma Ann was in the kitchen baking a cake for someone's birthday. Over a plate of fried chicken, I would later listen to her laugh about how miraculous it was that she managed to cartwheel out the window only to roll her ankle halfway down the yard on the butt of a magnolia flower. We go through the stories, my dad and I, as we unload the truck and trailer. There are at least 30 or 40 of the microwaves, ranging from the not-so-new to the obsolete relic. He'd been collecting them since way back when he was a microwave repairman, a vocation whose very existence affirms its antiquity. He stored them in the tacked-on back room where his own dad, my father's grandfather, used to upholster buggy seats on the side after returning from the Great War. A pile of microwaves with which my grandfather had planned to rig up a heating system for his house. Before the stroke and the slow-motion shuffle from the hydraulic easy chair toward the kitchen for little Debbie's, his arms outstretched, a cigarette in his mouth as he floated between cramped islands of furniture. Before Jimmy, the old drunk from the VFW, had to move in to cook Pop's meals and make sure he didn't fall and hurt himself. Before he fell and hurt himself and began hearing auditory hallucinations of a baritone singing Silent Night. Before all this, there was the stack of microwaves and a pile of auto parts and electric switchboards and rolls of aluminum ducting. What's he building in there? I imagine the neighbors whispering, listening to the whine of power tools in the night. What's he building in there? Electricity stolen from the city with rigged wires buried in the ground. What's he building in there? None of them surprised years later when a crowd of police responding to a too-loud TV found themselves as they opened Pop's door on the wrong end of a 38 special. A teetering immortality, he seesawed past death at every turn. Wily is the word his friends would use. Coyote man moving through the low hills in a Cadillac DeVille that he paid for with winnings from Moose Lodge poker games. Lucky Ray, they called him. The last of his siblings, the last of his friends, a 25-year widower, a man who'd buried a child. He took me up to Uncle Doug's that day on the far side of Lake Gaston to show me off to his last living brother. I guess, since I was driving the Cadillac, it's more appropriate to say that I took him. But either way, I saw how proud he was, a Budweiser in his hand, babbling on about accolades I never knew he knew. Sure, some of them were made up, but I caught the wink. I was in on the joke, and I would not deny his crafted Icarus wings. His tongue tilted like the speedometer's orange needle, and when we headed from Uncle Doug's house in the long shadows of summer, we headed southwest toward Carolina and the sun.
like to say anything?
I'm just in a supporting role up here now.
Great. If you're Thank you. That is really beautiful. We're really bad at being emotional, but we're all happy that you're here. We have trouble with our feelings, and we like you right, and we picked you. All of y'all. You'll learn how to do that once you're here. All y'all. Something like that. All right. Before becoming a writer, Mike McClelland worked as a grave digger. Done now. Wedding singer, antique salesman, and is a marketing strategy director for clients like Toyota, Miller Coors, and Buffalo Wild Wings. Like Sharon Stone and the Zipper, he hails from Medville, Pennsylvania. He has lived on 5 different continents, but now resides. How many continents are there? 7. That's what I thought.
I'm here to help.
It's the little one at the top that always gets me. It's almost gone. We're almost down to 6, right? Finally, my 4th grade paper will be right.
That's not a comment.
What? I don't know what I'm talking about. Isn't that one on the top? All right, I'm going to stop right now because they're going to take my job away before I'm done. He has lived on 5 different continents, but now resides in Georgia with his husband Simon and a menagerie of rescue dogs. Yay, dogs. Not those dogs, real dogs. His work, I'm excited about forget it, his work has appeared in a variety of anthologies and literary journals, and he frequently collaborates with his brother Casey, an abstract artist. Now, is Casey older or younger? Older. Does he give you advice? Okay. Bad brother he is. He is a former member of WPP's prestigious marketing fellowship program and holds a BA from Allegheny College and MSc from the London School of Economics. I walked by there this summer. And an MFA in creative writing fiction from Georgia College. His first book, Gay Zuday, will be released by Beautiful Dreamer Press on September 1st.
Woo!
There's an announcement on it on the English department website, I think. I clicked on it, I think. Mike McClelland.
Thank you for the introduction. I wanted to make a joke about being in the middle of 5, but my mom's here, so. I want to say, I came to this last year, I stalked you guys, which sounds creepy now that I'm saying it. It sounded really touching before I was planning it. But I came here last year and I saw you the new students reading, and I wanted so desperately to be here. So it's really emotional to be here. So it's really great. I'm reading a story called The Self-Banished. And the only thing you need to know is that it's told in 3 different perspectives. So when I say like Jamonville, or I say Dakota, or Chris, I'm not just like having a moment. It's the perspective switching. So, okay. The Methodist Church camp at Jamonville, just south of Pittsburgh, is famous for the big white cross that sits atop Dunbar's Knob, Jamonville's highest hill. At least one visit to the cross is a requirement of every camper's Jamonville experience. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Okay. The cross, known in Jamonville as the Great Cross of Christ, is 60 feet tall and made of several hundred tons of metal and concrete, an aggressive interpretation of the humbly man-sized cedar, pine, and cypress of the true cross. Years ago, a group of 15 boys took their requisite pilgrimage to the Great Cross of Christ, a brief detour from a week of fishing camp. Their leader, Big Jim, a retired pastor with multiple sclerosis and a passion for bass fishing, led them by lantern light to the top of Dunbar's Knob, struggling greatly over the vines and ferns and rocks on the path to Dunbar's bulbous zenith, but trusting God to give him the strength and vision to get them to the top. Under the cross's mighty metal wings, Big Jim prayed with the boys and then taught them one of his favorite hymns. "Shut the door," he sang to them. "Shut the door," they quacked back. "No, children, it's a spiritual. Sing it like the Africans." So on their descent, the 15 chalk white Pennsylvania boys sang, "Shut the door, keep out the devil, shut the door, keep the devil in the night." Despite being off-key, the hymn strengthened them, made them less afraid of the dark. One of the boys, Chris, a brooding 14-year-old whose parents had sent him to fishing camp to make friends or find the Lord, vowed to learn more about Africans. Another of the boys, Dakota, was talkative and energetic and could think about nothing but Chris and occasionally the glory of God. On their dark descent down Dunbar's Knob, Dakota threw his glasses in the dirt and crunched them under his foot. "Shit," he yelped when Chris was within earshot. "I broke my glasses and can't see anything." He couldn't see Chris smile, but he did hear him say, "No one can see us, so grab my hand and I'll lead you down." Dakota. "I am a scrubbing bubble. Mary Poppins, Mr. Clean, those people who help the hoarders, Alice from the Brady Bunch, and a Daz of Susie Orman. Today, that's who I am. Normally, I'm the kind of guy who spends 30 minutes of every hour overwhelmed by choice. But today, I have singular focus. I fluff pillows, clean dishes, throw cinnamon buns into our rarely used General Electric oven, for the smell, not the taste. I find that Robbie has stashed some pot in his usual spot, the magazine holder by his recliner. I grind it up in the garbage disposal. I empty all of our liquor bottles and throw the fallen soldiers into the trunk of my car. In a moment of inspiration, I run to our bedside table. I shake the lowest drawer and hear old sex toys clickety-clack together in the back like mismatched silverware. I throw those in the car as well, and I quickly call Robbie to tell him that I'm shoving multiple dildos in my trunk. But then I hear the tornado beats of Robbie's Beyonce ringtone and realize he's left his phone at home. Surely he will come back and get it. Robbie is never far away from his phone. And today, of all days, to be out of touch. We have a social worker coming to inspect us, to look in our drawers and our bank accounts and into our hearts and our minds and our marriage, to see if we're responsible enough, normal enough to have a baby. And I can't reach him. Of course he'll come back for it. I consider taking it to him at the school, but he doesn't like when I show up during class. "Look at the gym teacher's gay husband," he thinks they'll giggle, forgetting that everyone already knows everything about us. I pick up his phone. He says it's a betrayal for us to check each other's phones. I say I don't mind, I've got nothing to hide. He says it's just as bad as cheating. But since he's left me alone to clean up our house and our lives, I figure I can cheat just this once. Chris. I turn on the small fan in my office, which is about the size and style of a spaceship escape pod from a 70s sci-fi movie. Sanaa is usually hot. The embassy's air conditioning is down again. Nothing here ever works for long, which applies to the appliances and the people. Our security team is outsourced, soldiers for hire, their allegiance to dollar signs. The rest of us are here because of low rank or high pay or some combination of the two. The US of A pays us more to work where we might die, and if no one volunteers, they start at the bottom of the list. I had the luxury of being the low man on the totem pole and not giving a fuck where they sent me. I walk down the beige-tiled hallway into the front desk. Zarina will have gotten more contraband liquor over the weekend, and if I flirt, she'll give me first pick. In Yemen, you can drink in the comfort of your own home, but good luck finding any to buy. I brought some in my luggage, which they couldn't search. Thank you, diplomatic passport, but that was gone the first night. I round the corner, the yellow and white tiles on the wall reminding me of Dawn of the Dead. Most of the backwater embassies look like this, like the US was an alien race that colonized the world in the 1970s and then disappeared forever. I see Zarina gathering the mail in her soft arms. I don't recognize the mail guy, but he looks like he's having a rough day. Zarina grips a package wrapped in brown paper, and I see the mail guy wince. I barely have time to think, oh fuck, before the package explodes, blossoming like a big orange flower, burying Zarina and the mail guy and the other desk staff, throwing me into those fucking yellow tiles. Jamonville. The cicadas sang their shrill song as Chris led Dakota down the hill, sounding far better than the group of boys attempting the spiritual. Chris deftly moved Dakota around the trees and through bushes, staying far behind Big Jim and the other boys so that they couldn't see, but close enough that they could answer if the others called for them. Both boys were silent, and both could only feel their hands, conscious of every millimeter of flesh. Dakota's mind raced. He wanted to say everything. I like you, I'm gay. I'm not gay, you have really nice teeth. Can I kiss you? Chris kept his mind blank, wallowing in sensation, the warmth of their hands together, the stretching feeling from his lungs down to his belly. He could hear Dakota breathing heavily in the dark and wondered if he was afraid. He rubbed his thumb against the other boy's palm to comfort him. Dakota wondered if the rubbing was a signal of some kind. He looked back over his shoulder to the great cross of Christ looming above them, its white metal glowing in the moonlight, and thought that surely God was acting through Chris. Before he had time to second-guess his thoughts, Dakota yanked Chris's arms like a garden hose, pulling the other boy towards him. He let the Lord lead his lips, and they landed right on Chris's, which, and this surprised both of them, kissed back. Dakota. I punched the passcode into Robbie's phone, which is 0000, because he has the short-term memory of a seahorse. At our wedding, I delivered a lengthy list of how we met in college, how we both wanted the same thing, small-town life, children, and how we were both strong in our faith even if the church didn't want us, and how I was his forever. He responded, I agree. I checked the web browser on his phone and find the history clear. I opened the text messages and scrolled down, recognizing all the names. Down the list. Me, his best friend Diane, his mother, his brother, my mother, Diane H., and then more family and colleagues. I look at the list again. Diane is saved as Diane and Diane H. I don't think Robbie knows two Diane, so I open the Diane H message. Diane H. I can't believe how fat Maureen got. Robbie. He was so hot in school, how could he marry fat Maureen? Nothing too suspicious there, though I'm moderately outraged about how he was judging the fat girl and about him calling the other guy hot. But there are no crimes of the mind. We've been together since we were 19. It would be crazy for him not to wonder after 10 years. We were each other's first. Well, not my first kiss. That was Chris Thompson. Thinking about Chris still makes me feel all fuzzy. The dark night, the warm air, his hand. How can I remember something so vividly 15 years later? I scroll back up to the first Diane message on the phone. It's from early this morning, 3 o'clock. Why would Diane be texting at 3 in the morning? I open the message, read in reverse. Robbie, fuck. I scroll down. Diane, I wiped the server, don't worry about it. Robbie, what the hell do you mean they arrested him? Diane, listen dude, they arrested him in the morning and they have to have his server. Clear your computer. I don't understand what Robbie and Diane were talking about. I scroll further. It isn't Diane, of course. Then 3 days ago. My guy has a new server, we'll send you details. Look at this, don't worry, it's encrypted. And there's a video clip. It just looks like a mass of flesh. I can't figure it out. Then I see, it's flesh against flesh. Adult flesh against young flesh. I scream, fling the phone like it bit me, but its venom still festers in the wound. Chris. My ears ring, my face is burnt, and I can't detect any significant injuries. I'm on the floor. I'm fully aware of everything that's happened, so I doubt a concussion. I pull myself up. I look around for injured colleagues, but they are all obviously dead. The front of the building has blown open. Through the smoke, I see the front lawn and the gate. A truck, its front end reinforced with sloppily coiled rusted metal, has barreled through the front gate. No security guards. The truck must have gotten through, only just gotten through, because the doors are now starting to open. Of course they lead with guns, and I only catch a glimpse of ski mask faces before I run back the hallway. My hearing slowly returns, though everything sounds tinny. The lights have gone out, emergency lights illuminating portions of wall and floor. Suddenly, I'm an alien, Sigourney Weaver running for her life through a 1970s vision of the future. As I wind my way through the dark, a song comes into my head, and I start to hum, "Shut to do, keep out to devil, shut to do, keep to devil in the night." Despite my circumstances, I laugh. This can't be the last song I ever think of. But the song leads to a memory. Not a repressed memory, I think of it often. But instead of shame, I feel regret, and that's a change. I knew I need to get to the safe haven, which is supposedly fireproof and bulletproof. Given that it was installed by the same security contractors who abandoned the gate, I have little confidence. I round the corner and see two men, bushy beards sticking out below their masks, dumping gasoline liberally into the hallway. If they'd come from the front, they'd have to have gone past me, so there must be multiple entry points. I hear them barking at each other, thinking I'm going to need to translate, but they're British and young, new recruits. Still, I wait for them to say something about Aloe, but they just complain about how they hadn't seen enough action and then strike a match. I'm disappointed because I would have respected them if they were doing this for God. Jamonville. They had to stop kissing, worried that if they fell too far behind, the other campers would come looking. But to Dakota, it felt like the start of something special. In his mind, he imagined them commuting between their small towns, telling their parents they were best friends. Then when they turned 16, they'd be able to drive back and forth and see each other. Then they'd go to prom together and then the same college. Then they could head out and travel the world. Chris focused on the feel of Dakota's hand, ignoring the heat in his cheeks, the shakiness in his knees. The real world, and the shame that came with it, threatened to break through, and he pushed it back. He knew it would come later, so he tried to think of nothing but that moment, the dirt below his feet, the cross on the hill, the hand holding onto his in the dark night. Dakota. I'd often fantasized about Robbie cheating on me. I'd discover a text on his phone or come home to find him in bed with a UPS man, watch for a little bit, then slap him across the face and blaze through the house, a comment of righteous anger, packing my things into a suitcase, putting them in his car, which is nicer than mine, and driving away to a new life. But this wasn't cheating. A small part of me rejoiced in being disgusted at what I saw. If society tells you you're a pervert long enough, you maybe start to wonder. Now I know I'm a good person, and Robbie isn't. I wonder if it's been planted or spam. Like a virus that sends stuff to your phone and then pretends to respond as you. Maybe I'm in denial. Robbie and I have been together forever. How would I not have noticed this? He works in a school. Oh, that makes sense all of a sudden. Why would he leave his phone here if he had that kind of thing to hide? He does have a lot on his mind with the social worker visiting and apparently a computer full of illegal help porn to erase. If Robbie is caught, we'll never get a baby. Even if I divorce him, they will see that I was married to him, someone who did something so horrible. There's no way I can fix this, hide it, clean it up. I've built my whole life around having a family, children. I wanted to travel, but we saved every penny since college for a house and then for an adoption, to show everyone that we could have a normal small-town American life. Now I put myself in position to lose everything because of someone else's crimes. Checkmate when I was playing against myself. I pray and I pray and I pray and I think about the last time I prayed so hard and realize that I'm under the great cross of Christ praying for Chris Thompson to notice me. It worked that time, didn't it? But now that I've thought about it, as hard as I try, I can't pray to fix the present. Instead, I pray to be back on that hill in the dark, being led by the hand in the warm summer night. Chris. One of them takes off his mask and his pale face glows bone white in the emergency lighting. I smile, hoping that a security camera picks this up and that all of these raving loons at home will see the terrorists come in all colors. If this isn't covered up once we're all dead, I follow protocol, retreat, and wind through the back hallway towards a safe haven. I follow the rules. The one time I broke them, a weak moment in Dubai, I got myself arrested for homosexual acts and had to use my diplomatic immunity to get myself home. Perfect record tarnished, moved to a desk, put on the bottom of the list. No one else cared about the homo part, just getting arrested part. I was the one who cared about the homo part. I take these posts in countries where doing these things is illegal because I know it will keep me on acting on those urges. I built a career at keeping the devil behind the door. Smoke has started to gather at the ceiling. As I move slowly down the hallway, the smoky curtain darkens and moves down the wall. I try to think of myself as Roger Moore in a Shark Tank, water rising. But for some reason, I think of Dakota, his hand, his lips. Out of all my memories, achievements, family, this is what I think about? But the image gathers behind my eyes, a window for me to step through. The smoke on my burnt face becomes the Jamonville night, the whirring of the alarms, the cicadas. I hold my young mind at bay the first and last time I ever did so, as Dakota's lips meet mine, and it feels like a discovery, the first of many times that this kind of thing will happen, the secret that adults keep from children. This is the last thing I want to think about.
Okay.
There's an official bathroom break happening.
Genevieve Arley is a writer and translator from California. She holds degrees from Stanford, Columbia, and the University of Iowa, where she was an arts fellow and edited Exchanges, the Iowa Journal of Literary Translation. Her recent work has appeared in Flyway, Little Village, Waxwing, and St. Petersburg Review, among other journals. For her dissertation at the University of Georgia, she's planning on a hybrid biography memoir of the 20th century prima donna Tanaquil Lecoq.
I'm
Claire?
so glad I didn't have to read it because it's French. French is worse than my
Help me out. How do I?
It's Tanaquil Clark. She was basically American, so say it American. Say it American, yeah.
Thank you. Well, she was a ballerina, and she was American, and whose career was cut short by polio and her own 10-year history of chronic fatigue. Please join me in welcoming Genevieve.
That's my 10-year history of chronic fatigue, not Tana Keel's. She only had polio. What? So my MFA is in translation, so I've never actually read original work before, so give me some laughs, guys. Thanks. I feel better already. So I'm gonna start with, this is not the first poem I actually published, but it's the first one I'd like to be on record as publishing. Real first one is under a different pseudonym, which you'll never find and you'll never read, and that's the way it should be. The short version of why I write with the pen name is that I'll be damned before I put my father's name on my heart. He's an okay guy, but here's part of why. Okay, so this is called, Lindsay's program to publish this one. It's called From the Tree. My father is of average stature as men go, and strong as men are, and hirsute in his ears as the years wear on, and on his back, the skin on his hands cracked from long hours of ungloved carpentry and metalwork, of nosing around in the beehive for wooden frames fat with honey, but with certain effeminacies about him, like his hypersensitive hearing I inherited, and his size 9 virgin white feet. With peasant soles, my mother plods across the summer asphalt as he tiptoes daintily in the mottled shade. He gave her 2 daughters, and thank God, she laughs. If I'd had a son with that man, he would have been a gay poet, and they would have hated each other. It's because they don't know me. I can ask, how do I put this? Here I am. They're okay with all of it now? This one, I'm really bad at titles, so I apologize in advance for the title of this one. It's one of 3 kind of, they're not really sonnets because they're unrhymed, but they're 14 lines.
We did that class today.
Really? Great! I've been writing unrhymed sonnets, and here's one of them, and it's called Ferryman's Matan. Since morning, I've killed 2 houseflies who trapped themselves indoors only to languish at the windowsill like housewives in the fur and lace of mourning, licking salt from the lips of teacups, impregnating melon rinds in the trash, and released 5 ladybugs to an opalescent autumn, some uniform persimmon, some polka dot candy apple, so at least they didn't have to die on their backs, wings splayed, legs splayed, in dusty microbial corners, but the fresh-blown grave of the world. Whatever lures them in from outside, they never escape unassisted, though for now I come and go as I please. You start writing enough stuff and you realize you always write about the same thing, and my thing is apparently leaving. I'm always leaving. This is about this one time that I was in love with a bartender. Actually, it wasn't even, but could be. Do you still temp-bar? Okay. It's called Castling. He claimed he hated everything green that grew and bloomed in spring, and was sad when hearts like mine thawed and his still carried the torch of frost. The original Disney villain, the nicest thing his coworker ever called him, as intermittently he dims the lamps with dusk to encourage the mood. It's not just me in here tonight. The original damsel in distress in shining armor, I ply him, Ash, don't meet your end plunging off a cliff or impaled on a sword. Go do something noble. Like what? He replies, coldly rose and golden in my eyes, and smiles. Also, ice can start a fire, only he's what's left after I go out. Yeah, well, oh well. One more unrhymed sonnet, and this is about, I started a 2-person book club with a friend of mine who is kind of a lapsed Jew, even though he's a rabbi. My dad is an engineer, and I couldn't help but turn out engineer-like. So anyway, so he and I read some Christian theology together. This is about Simone Weil's Gravity and Grace. It's called Void and Compensation. My rabbi and I figured it out. If the sun is due to explode in some 5 billion years, nothing really matters, to quote the late sage Mercury. But such scale is beyond humans to conceive, who can't help thinking generationally, longing for the immortality of some 2 millennia, as if any of us could touch Jesus Christ. Better to live while we can and let the sun burn out on its own cosmic time. If there is a God, my rabbi now believes, it's impossible to know anything about him, to prove or disprove or describe him or her or it, and after 3 decades of sworn atheism, I tend to agree. Okay, here's a prose poem. The title is Bad Again. I forgot to look up the Greek pronunciation. So I'm just gonna, it should be called Middlebury, Vermont. Instead it is called Campaspe Painting Apelles. Sorry. I'll change it, okay. He noticed me right away. Oh, wait, for those of you who don't know, a trilby is a kind of jaunty British hat. Nobody's wearing one, but just so you know, okay. He noticed me right away because I wore a matching lavender pink sundress and trilby, despite the population 8,496 not giving a fig how anyone looked around town. A V-neck hugged his torso like he'd been riding horses summer long. Indeed, he'd just moved back from a ranch in Chapel Hill, a detail that mystified all my southern stereotypes. So are you married? He asked, fingering my curls. Evidently, I didn't look the type for casual encounters. Don't they have any farm boys out in Iowa? But I'd brought the national average with me. There, he declared, tasseling the crown of my head. I took out your part. You don't need it. He smiled a conspiratorial smile. Oh, divided mind. A week later, I passed through the salon for some pomade. He looked up as I came in, but gave no sign of recognition. No trilby that time. This is about a game of Scrabble. All the best. It isn't a test, but the symbolism of his not knowing the etiquette for eating cherries in mixed company is not lost on me. He gets the sticky sweetness on his palms. I spit the stones mess free into an empty glass, red on red reserve. His move, but he draws a blank. My move, so I make to go. So I go. Still I'm glad of an abdomen today, of organs not only skin deep, though he only sees to sense me and only he can read him, so my gift is in the leaving. As with everything he concedes, you try to do your best. He's a mathematician, so it's all right. Okay, this is the last one I'll read in my last 16 seconds. Fast. It's called Threat That I Am, and it is self-explanatory. To opt for a pat-down over advanced imaging technology, I leave even earlier for the airport than I already don't. Into various bins, I disburden myself of bags overstuffed with contingency plans, trail mix, windbreaker, extra reading material, talismanic shamrock socks, then stand off to one side. The back of the female agent's hand clearing my inner thigh in sight of my items beyond the barrier, the highlights in her bobbed wig garish, blue eyeliner harsh as she peers up at me, suddenly not surface but some firm, compact organ, one side of her face drooping, post-stroke or other head injury, is the most intimate contact I've made in recent memory, if memory serves. Then I'm free to get my things and go. Thank you.
Genevieve can host next year, no? No, so did someone really win the Publishers Week? Why is there a Oh, there really is a note that someone won the Publishers Weekly prize on here. Does anyone actually win that? Is that a thing?
Well, that's what they say.
But yeah, the question is, does anyone actually win that? Why did you write that here?
Well, I won. I won a few years ago.
No, she didn't. Anyhow. Our final reader tonight, Emma Catherine Perry, earned her MFA in poetry from Cornell University at Cornell. No, okay, wait. Sorry, I think I need my reading glasses. I thought that was a period. At Cornell, Emma served as an assistant editor for Epic magazine and taught creative writing as a Truman Capote lecturer. She has also taught world literature at Auburn Correctional Facility in Auburn, New York. Before arriving in Athens, Emma spent the last few years teaching middle school in New Orleans and Oakland. Her poetry has been recognized with an Academy of American Poets Prize and has been published in the Susquehanna Review and Third Coast. She is originally from that's all I have, but I saw this, Hampshire. Thank you.
Save the worst for last. Hey, all right. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you to Leanne and Maggie for being such awesome MCs. Thanks to Cine for giving us the space, and Christine for just being a boss and making it all happen. This is called On the Proposed Construction of a Lunar Outpost. It'd be great if we could get robots to do that. Or terrible. Taking jobs from hardworking space contractors. I imagine working on a scaffold in low gravity as close as can be to the void and light headed to boot. I imagine the sky shatter-prone, upturned bowl shield between us and the real universe isn't like that, though. If I fall beyond the stratosphere, I don't collide with the sky. I continue, not like flying. I continue to fall between here and the moon through intention, space trash, home and away. The moon couldn't possibly be mine, although I confess to feeling it prefers me. I love you, fickle face. What couldn't we populate with ramshackle endeavor and garbage? We humans, we do. We can imagine leaving home one day we saw ourselves from space and the rest of the present is immediately past. We know if a telescope elides distance becomes normal. In all the off-Earth movies, there's Earth yearn before we've even left. We always miss it. We always leave. If we can see it, we can get there. If we can get there, we can plant a flag and the arid regolith will form the ground anew. And then we build, and then we leave from there. I can imagine leaving home. I will remember the heft of the kettle with the utmost fondness, the arbitrary symmetry of the 24-hour clock. If I can imagine, my reach starts there. My new shoulder has a new arm's length. I have a new foot, hovering halfway over the floor of a room where everyone I know is sitting with their hands folded in their laps, watching me halfway out another door. I love my home, but I'm a ruiner. We could call the outpost Shackleton. We could call it Columbia again. I think NASA's plans for an outpost on the moon have waned a little bit since the partnership with different corporations. Now we're focused on Mars. But you can still find these really cute webisodes on the NASA website that they put together in 2007 to increase public buy-in for their moon project. I think they got their charismatic astrophysicist to do it. It's really nerdy and really cute. Okay, glitter on the hatch. We only ever see things because of the bouncing light. You know you and I exist at the same time, though never in the same space, and we can't see each other right when we're looking, not in a moment like that. We keep on living, even though the sight of us hasn't made it into the other's brain quite yet. Microseconds ahead of each other at all times in the future. For years, dummy, your crazy car being piloted around like a giant shark cruising all skank-like through the shallowing speed zones. So future. Eye strain being the problem we associate with looking at the same thing on the same day it hits us differently or at different times or not. At all times we've been alone together. Lovely, really. Some afternoon unspooling forever, for example. That stillness produces clarity. In the air over the elm behind the house. Inside the stillness, a sunlit cloud of insects move around and around each other, circling the other that is the hazy self you circle, the other in a way you can't see the back of your own head. The bugs contemplate themselves in the mirror of their companions and are satisfied, at least they don't seem intent on going anywhere, rather remain in the columnar lays. I wonder how long they've been at this reproduction. Spontaneous glisten, glitter on the hatch. Could have been since this morning, could go on all night, if they last. You say you don't see the bug cloud, and I wonder why. I'm glad. I wonder what there is to loving. I wonder what there isn't. This one's called St. George and the Bird's Eye. And it says right here, it's after Paolo Uccello. St. George, the Dragon Killer, is a really popular image in Renaissance art. My favorite iteration of that is Paolo Uccello's painting, for a lot of reasons, but mainly because if you look at it closely, there's a thin golden chain that connects the princess who needs to be saved to the dragon. And she's holding it kind of like this, and it looks like she's taking her dog for a walk. Love it. St. George and the Bird's Eye. Now the land like the grid it always was. Acre by square, acre and the mountains like the crumpling. Distance gives perspective. Things get small. Things get faint. An improbable bright band at the back of the scene where the pale and molecular gather to shiver and approximate. The plane took off and I thought, oh, irrevocable. Oh, it will not be unseen. Perspective creates the illusion of distance. Pick your vanishing point, perhaps the point of the lance where it punctured the dragon's eye, perhaps this gesture, if the gesture, oh, to think, is exactly where the pain. I close my eyes and lay my mind like a finger upon it. The earth gets farther away and the cities get farther apart. Oh, irrevocable. Who's on whose leash? I know dragons are for lancing. It is just not as I'm right. Could you see me holding up my end of the noose from where I stood behind him? If this is how you do, my pet, how will you do with me? How shall I recede? Be you gentle, and be you kind, and please be patient with me. Okay. Okay. Lay down your arms that I may, find a way to return from whatever coast, whichever horizon side I arrive, lay down and look across the green medallions of irrigation circles below logic of ranch roads squaring off across arid range, then fewer lines, then none, then please be there, dragons. Do you guys watch Game of Thrones? I don't. So this is my last poem coming right up. It's called Swimming in the Superfund. I lived in Ithaca, New York for 4 years, and it's beautiful there in the summer, and we used to go swimming every day we could. The first year, our favorite swimming hole was at the base of Ithaca Falls, and it's illegal. You can't swim there because it's dangerous, so don't tell. And then I found out about a year later that it's actually downstream from the old Ithaca gun factory, and they were not very careful when they disposed of the byproducts of their munitions manufacturing. So it's a Superfund site, which means that it is one of the most polluted places in the country, federally recognized as a national emergency. So, okay, swimming in the Superfund. We decide this water tastes different than spring or chlorine. Drink again. Yeah, different. Water sliding down our skin drips down, towel ends plash to the linoleum. I like the way your foot arcs with your toes pressed to the floor, like the way we drink water in silence and swim without speaking, the sound of the falls like the whole world in our ears. Everything tastes a little funny since we moved here and started swimming in the Superfund, but maybe it's how thirsty we feel good after swimming light with the float memory in the cumulus air, incarnate forgetting skin is a permeable border, even metal seeps through. 1,000 knives osmote in parts per million. Belly up. I make islands with my breasts and knees above the surface. Heavy metals drift down like stones settle on our cell floors. Cadmium, barium, uranium, plutonium, lead, our secret, jagged under the smooth rill of summer. Not dragged down adrift, under the surface tension holds the droplets bead down your back when you pull yourself out with your arms. Feel good after swimming. Our hair dries soft and tumbly halos the water unravels from headwater. Such raveling light on our eyelids warms. Floating is every direction, centripetal forcing us into stasis. The more metal our bodies absorb from swimming, the more metallic our bodies become, the heavier earth with all its heavings rapid and tectonically slow at once furl us into the magnetized core. We can choose to touch on this, but we decide against talking about the metals, which choice is a kind of freedom. I almost can't taste the different forces. The difference in the Superfund water holds us particulate in its expedient solution to summer is to swim, and for a moment we are diluted into the same. I like that. I can tell now you are light and your skin feels like my skin against you know what I can't quite figure out. The way freedom works us, these days make us happy. The way the tall grass night shines with lightning bugs sublimate into atmosphere, 1,000,000 parts per. I want to pull my shirt over my head and go around and around in all that.